Good afternoon, all of you. Am I audible? Is my screen visible? Someone please respond. Okay. Good afternoon, all of you. I think yesterday we have seen how to use arrays, how to create arrays, right? So today, let me tell you about something new related to JavaScript. JavaScript is so all those who have joined now. Please text your roll numbers. JavaScript is object-based language. So there is a difference between object-oriented programming language and object-based language. So everything is similar in functionality when compared with Java, but in Java, you have something called classes. You have something called classes. Please, all of you, once again, I'm requesting. Once again, I'm requesting all of you, please text your roll numbers. Those who have joined now, just now, text your roll numbers immediately. If you are not texting your roll numbers, it is useless. You're not going to get attendance. So observe that. Notice that. So there are 37 students right now. Okay. So this is object-based language. I have something called a concept called containership. In Java, classes, or let me say packages. Packages contain classes and interfaces. Classes and interfaces contain methods. Methods contain code. Methods contain code. So this is how containership is organized in Java. Code is the last part. It is contained within methods. We'll define code. We write code inside methods. We call methods as containers of code, and methods are in turn written inside classes and interfaces. Right? So classes can be called as containers of methods. Classes can be called as containers of methods. And in turn, classes and interfaces are defined under packages. So we can say packages are containers of classes and interfaces. So this is how containership works in Java. Coming to JavaScript, you don't have the concept of packages, but even you don't have the concept of classes, and you have objects. You have directly objects. So generally in Java, we create objects for either classes or interfaces. But in JavaScript, directly instead of having classes, in place of classes, we have objects. And these objects are associated with properties and functions. So these functions are nothing but methods in Java. Okay? So you don't have the concept of classes, but you have the concept of objects. Each and every object is associated with properties and functions. So properties are nothing but variables. So in Java, every class we declare some variables and methods, right? So here also you'll have those variables and methods, but instead of placing them inside classes, we directly associate them or link them with objects. Okay. So in other words, you can say instead of classes, you have objects. Just like classes contains methods and variables, objects in JavaScript contain variables and methods, which are called as properties and functions. Instead of using the term variables, we'll use the term properties, and for methods, we use the term functions. But it is up to you whether you are going to refer to them as functions or methods. But they must be referred actually as functions only. Fine. And these objects are again user defined and predefined. They're both user defined and predefined. So just like you have predefined classes and interfaces and packages in Java, you can also have objects also as predefined and user defined. So first we'll see predefined objects, and then we'll see later user defined objects. We'll discuss them separately. First we'll list out some of the predefined objects in JavaScript. As and when required, when it is necessary for us in a particular topic, we are going to use some of the predefined objects. Then later we are going to use exclusively some of the other objects also. I'm requesting all of you once again text your roll numbers. So some of you are joining and leaving. I don't know whether they have texted their roll numbers or not. If they don't text the roll number and just leave and watch it on YouTube, then you will not get attendance. Keep this in mind. So objects can be user defined as well as predefined. So we'll see some of the predefined objects first as and when required. Yesterday, actually, why I'm talking about all these concepts now is because we are going to use one predefined object now. We are in the topic called arrays. Right? Yesterday, I've shown you one way of creating arrays and using them in our JavaScript program. So there is alternatively another way to create arrays in JavaScript. So I'll show you that how to create that JavaScript arrays now using the predefined object called array. Right? So under the predefined objects, there is an object called array objects. There is an object called array object, right? This array object can be used to create arrays, just like we have created arrays yesterday. Just like we have created arrays normally in simple manner yesterday, we can also create arrays as objects also, right? So some of you have already learned Java, but I don't know how many of you have not learned Java earlier. So for their sake, I'm telling all these concepts now because I need to keep in mind those people who are new to any other programming languages other than C. They must have learned C in first year, but in second or third year you don't have these subjects, Java subject. Or third year, some of you have opted for open elective Java programming. If that is the case, then there is no issue. But I don't know how many of you of them are like that. But majority of you might have not learned Java earlier. So for their sake, I need to keep you in mind and teach this topic. So in Java, you have something called constructor. You have something called constructor. So the same way here also in JavaScript, just like in classes have constructors in Java. In JavaScript, objects are also associated with constructor. So what is a constructor means? Constructor is a special method uh, which has same name as that of object. If it is in Java, they will have same name as that of the class. But because JavaScript does not have classes and we only have objects in place of classes, right? So these constructors in JavaScript will have same name as that of the object. So if I have an object called predefined object called array, then the constructor for that array will be like this, for example. So the name of the constructor will be array, open and close parenthesis like this. So this is the constructor for array object. And remember, this A is capital letter. You cannot use small letter here. So Java follows a naming convention. Java follows a naming convention. Same is the case with JavaScript also. JavaScript also follows the naming convention, which is similar to Java except for objects. So in Java, let me put out here. This is under Java. The naming convention will be like this. Naming convention classes use something called Pascal case letters. And methods use camel case. Variable names or object names, they also use camel case. And packages use lowercase letters. So this is the naming convention followed in Java. All the classes will follow Pascal case letters. Pascal case means, I'll tell you what is Pascal case. The methods will follow camel case letters. Variables and objects also will follow the same camel case letters. Packages will use only lowercase letters. So what do you mean by Pascal case means? So if there is a class name, if you're creating a class, for example, say student info. For example, the class name is student info. So this name contains two English words. One is student and the second one is info, right? So if in that way, how many words are there in your class name? All those words will begin with capital letters. So the first word student, it will begin with capital letter S, and the second word info, it also begins with capital letter I, right? So in that way, you give a name which contains multiple English words in that name, then all those words must begin with a capital letter. So such kind of case is called as Pascal case. Okay. Then coming to methods, for example, yesterday we have used a method called parse int. So we have this parse int method even in Java, right? So there is a class called integer class, predefined class called integer class, and that class defines this method called parseInt method. That method is called as parseInt method, right? So look at the number of words that are there in this method name. First one is parse and second one is int. There are two words. The first word is all in small letters and the second word is starting with a capital letter. So in that way, after the first word, if there are 9 more words, for example, n number of words, totally your method name, out of those n number of words, the first word will be in lowercase letters, and the remaining words will begin with capital letter. Right. So here in this case, you have two words. The first word is in small letters, parse, and the remaining words will begin with capital letters. So what is the remaining word? Only one word is remaining, int. So that must begin with capital letter I. Right. So in that way, if you have another example, say for example, student average marks example. So this is a method. Let us consider. So how many words are there? 3 words are there: student, average, and marks. So the first word is in small letters. Second word begins with capital letter A, and third word also begins with capital letter M. So in that way, after the first word, all the remaining words must begin with capital letter. This is the convention, and this case is called as camel case letters. Right? So Java follows this camel case letters for all the methods. And even variables also follow variable names and object names also. If they are predefined, they'll just follow this camel case letter. But for user defined classes and user defined methods and objects and variables, we don't normally follow this naming convention. But when you take any predefined classes, string class is there, string string, that is a predefined class. So it begins with capital letter S. Integer class is there, capital letter I. Random class is there, capital letter R. Right? So that way, even the exception handling classes, arithmetic exception class is there. It has two words, arithmetic and exception. A is capital and exception E is capital. So that way, predefined classes will definitely follow the naming convention of Java. Even the system.out.println, system is a predefined class, so system S is capital. Right? So in that way, Java's predefined classes, methods, objects, variables, packages, they'll definitely follow this naming convention. That is the reason why the packages like java.lang, java.io, java.applet, all these package names are in lowercase letters. AWT, NET, networking package, util package, all these are in lowercase letters if you have observed. The package names will be java.io, IO in small letters, or java.util. All these are in lowercase letters, right? So they are completely in lowercase. They don't follow any Pascal case or camel case. They are always written in lowercase, irrespective of how many words are there in that name. It doesn't matter. They'll follow only lowercase letters. So this is the naming convention followed in Java. So coming to JavaScript, we don't have classes. In place of objects, you have uh, classes, right? So let me write this naming convention here in JavaScript. Coming to a naming convention for objects, objects will follow Pascal case. Right? They'll follow Pascal case. For example, you have a predefined object called regexp, regular expression object. Right? So it has two words. One is reg, second one is ex. This is a short representation of regular. This is short representation of expression, regular expression. So totally you have two words. But all the words are beginning with capital letter. Reg is beginning with R capital and exp is beginning with E capital. So this is Pascal case followed for objects. But in Java, objects will follow camel case. Because we don't have classes which follow Pascal case, they are replaced with objects in JavaScript. So they'll follow the same Pascal case which is followed by classes in Java, right? And then variables. Variables means nothing but properties. properties will follow camel case. Follow camel case. And functions, they also follow the camel case. Will also follow camel case. So yesterday we have seen parseInt function, right? For example, we have seen parseInt function yesterday, predefined function, parseInt function. Right? Document dot write function we have seen, alert function, prompt function, confirm function. These are all predefined functions we have seen. But all these write function, confirm, alert, prompt, all these are single word names, right? So when there are single words, because that itself is the first word, that first word will be in small letters. That is the reason why write function, prompt function, and alert function, confirm function, all these are in all lowercase. But coming to parseInt function, which is a predefined function, which has two words in it. So first word is in smaller case letters, and second word begins with a capital letter, right? And properties, for example, yesterday we have seen array.length property, lenbth, because it has only one word, so that will be in smaller letters. Okay, so that way this naming convention is followed, except for objects. The remaining naming conventions are same in JavaScript. So by following this uh, naming convention, object name of array is the name of the object itself is array. So because this follows Pascal case letters, there is only one word. So that must begin with capital letter. So if there are multiple words, all those multiple words must begin with capital letters, right? So the constructor, as I told you earlier, is a special method which has same name as that of objects, right? So this is a function. You can call this as it as function instead of method. We don't use the term method in JavaScript. Instead, we'll use the term function. It is up to you whether you're going to refer to it as function or method. If you are habituated to Java, then we refer it, some people will refer it as methods. Otherwise, we will refer it as function. If you don't know Java, you have learned only C language, then you'll refer to it as function. So now that you understood the concept of objects in JavaScript, predefined objects in JavaScript, we need to list out some of the objects. But I'm not going to list out all the objects. Some of the objects I'm going to list out. Even document is also an object that we have used yesterday, document.write function. So that write function is associated with the object document. So how do you call a method of a class in Java? Object name dot method name, right? In the same way here also in JavaScript, object name dot function name. So if a function is associated with a object, or if that function is defined within that object, then we call that function using that object name dot function. Similarly, property name also object name dot property name. In that way, you're going to access. Fine. So you have array object, and that object has a constructor like this array function constructor. So if you want to create an array like this using an array object, predefined array object, then the syntax you need to follow is you have to use the same var keyword that you use for creating uh, variables. So use that var keyword followed by give a name for array, and then is equal to, you must use a new operator just like you use it in Java, and then the constructor name you need to mention array. And directly if you want to assign some values to that array, then you can assign 1 comma 2 comma 3 numeric values like this array. This is one example. uh, you can assign values like this. Okay. So now let me create a small program and show it to you. Let me save this first. ArrayObject.html. Directly, I'm writing the script in the body section. Not creating any function. So just to demonstrate arrays, I'm writing this program. So I'll take my chance here and create an array like this. Say I'm creating an array marks array with a semicolon. So you have obtained say 75, 67, 89. That way in three different subjects you have say. Let us take all the 6 subjects. So now this marks will become an array containing initialized with 6 elements. The size of this array will be 6. Now if you load this marks dot length, then this is going to display what? The length of the array. Right? So I can display a message like this here of the array is concatenated with marks dot length. So what is the output it is showing? Length of the array marks is 6. Okay. This is how you can create arrays using this array object. So let me create one more array. I'm going to create an array called cars. Instead of storing numerical values, I want to store a string values. Then you have to enclose those string values within either single quote or double quote. So I'm using double quotes here. Say I'm going to use this thing. I don't know whether it is right or wrong. Even length of the array cars is 3, right? So in index 0, that is marks of 0 will contain what? 75. Marks of 1 will contain 67. Marks of 2, 89. Marks of 3, 65. 4 is 72 and 5 is 18. Similarly, cars of 0 will contain Brezza. Cars of 1 will contain Harrier. Cars of will contain Creta. So you can assign them directly in this way, or you can also do it in the way that you have done yesterday's program. We have seen how to create a blank array and then assign that array with values that we read from the HTML form or prompt box, and then store them in this array object. In that way also you can do. So if that is the case, then you need to leave this parameters blank. So if you leave these parameters blank, then that array will be a blank array. Then later you have to use same indexing marks of 0. You can take a for loop and use that for loop inside the program and insert values into that array. So the same is the concept, except the way you declare those arrays using this array object, using a new operator and array object like this. And if you want to create a blank array, remove all the elements and we just open the parenthesis and close the parenthesis. Right? Or else you can, if you want to initialize them, you can initialize them like this with comma separated list. If it is a numeric value, either integer or floating point or double, whatever it is, then you can use directly those values, each separated with a comma. If they are string values, then you enclose those elements within double quote or single quote and separate each value with a comma, just like you do it here also. Right? Fine. So why I have introduced this object concept here is because in JavaScript we can represent everything in the form of objects also, because it is an object based language. Even the numeric variables that we create, even they also can be represented in the form of objects. So let me list out some of the objects here. So predefined objects can be like so array already we have used. Then you have regular expression object, you have number object, you have boolean object, you have date object, you have even the document itself is an object, but it will be in, that is a different thing. We will discuss about document objects separately. And you also have math object. Okay? So each of this object will be associated with some functions. As I told you, every object will contain some properties and functions. Right? So in the same way, array object contains some function, regular expression object contains some function, number object contains some function, boolean also contains some function, date also contains some function, math also contains some functions. So I'm giving it as task for you. I'll deal with array object, already I've done that now, right? So regular expression also we will see later. I'll teach you how to use this regular expression, because the purpose of this regular expression is different. And number object also is simple, boolean is also simple, and math also is very simple. So using math, you don't create any objects in your program, just like you do it in array. Using an array object, we have created our own objects, right? Array objects in our program. ఎవరండి వీళ్ళు 12:35కి జాయిన్ అవుతున్నాడు నవకాంత్ రెడ్డి. And regular expression will be used in a different purpose. Number will be used in a different manner. If you want to create a number, for example, you can create a number like this, where n is equal to number like this. This is the number is constructor for number object. Constructor, and we can give a 10 like this. Right? This will be n will be an object. It is not an ordinary variable, it is an object. But this object contains what? A numeric value 10. Contains a numeric value 10. Fine. Similarly, just like you created an array object, you can create also a number object. But what is the difference between if you create a variable like this where and use it as directly 10 value like this, and this is a variable, ordinary variable. but this one is an object. So don't use this number as an object. It is not suggested actually. When to use this number object is if you want to create multiple values 10, 20 like this and store them in that, then in that case you can use that number object. But if you are storing only one value, don't use this number object. Okay, so it is not suggested to use number object. And even to create a string also, you have a string object also. Have a string object also. So how do you create a string normally? uh, where some, say for example, name is equal to, you can give this name, so this will become a string variable. So this is an ordinary variable, but this variable stores a string value like this. Just like this variable stores a integer value 10, this variable stores a string value. So this can be considered as a string. Apart from this, you can also create a string also like this. String name is equal to new operator and use the string and give a value like this as a parameter. Like this also you can do. So, but this is not suggested, right? Even boolean also can be done like this, where some variable, say I am going to give a is equal to new boolean variable like this. And in this, you can either mention true or false in small letters. Yes. So if you mention true here, then the variable a will have boolean value true. If you mention false, then it will be false. So if you want to use false, then write false in small letters like this. Alternatively, you can also write like this, where a is equal to directly true like this. This is another way. So this is by using object. This is by using an ordinary variable. Well, this is by using object, and this is by using ordinary variable. This is by using a number object, and this is by creating ordinary variable. So for number, for string, and for boolean objects, don't use these boolean objects. You just use variables. This is not suggested to use in your programs, right? So we'll not have much discussion on this number objects. But these number objects are associated with some functions. Those functions are important. So am giving it to you as a task for identifying, for listing out all the functions that you have associated with this number object, string object, and boolean object, even math object also. For example, this math object will have functions like sqrt function, uh, all the trigonometric functions, sine function, cos function, tan function, cosecant function, uh, all those functions will be there. And even you have round function, ceil function, uh, will have floor function. All these are mathematical functions. You also have absolute function abs. These are associated with this math object. So if you want to use any of these functions with these numbers or anything, then how to call them? Math object name dot. If you want to use sqrt function, use them like math dot sqrt. Similarly, math dot ceil, math dot round. That way you can use them. Okay. So directly you will use those functions with the object name math. But we are not going to create any objects like this where object name is equal to new math or math constructor. In that way, you are not going to use. Okay. So even if you create number objects also associated with this number, you'll have some functions. Just like I listed out some functions for math objects, you also list out all the functions that are associated with the string function and boolean function, boolean object, number object, and string object also. So this I'm giving it as a task for you. List out all those functions and try to write a small program using those functions for each and every object. In one program, you cover all the functions for math object. In one program, you cover all the functions for boolean object. Similarly, in another program, cover all the functions for number object, and another program for string object, right? But this date object and regular expression object, I am going to deal it with for you, because the regular expression purpose is entirely different. Date also is somewhat different when compared with this one. These math, string, boolean, and number are very simple, so that is the reason I'm giving it as task for you. Regular expression is a bit complex, and you need to have some discussion. I need to teach you something about regular expression and even date also. So I'm going to handle this regular expression and date for you. But number, boolean, math, and string is in your hands. So I'm giving it to you. So take it as an assignment and list out all those functions and write programs and upload it to the folder that I have given on Google Drive for the next week. That is on Thursday. So I'll check before Thursday's class all your programs, even the previous programs also I'm going to check it. So please list out all those and upload your programs to that folder in Google Drive. Right? Fine. So for now, I'm going to deal with date object, because we have already done with array. So we'll go to date object today, because time is only 15 minutes, hardly 15 minutes time is left over. So I'll wind up this date object today. In tomorrow's class, I'm going to deal with regular expression object. That is the next class. Deal with regular expression object. Fine. So let me create another program now for date objects. Shweta, Shweta, Shweta. Fine. So how to create a date object? So just like you use var keyword to create a variable or object. So for creating a date object also, you have to use the same var keyword. Say I'm going to create date one here. This is one date constructor. So you know Java, a class can have more than one constructor. Similarly, even in JavaScript also, an object can have more than one constructor. So the date object has more than one constructor. It has totally four constructors. So the first constructor, I'm using it here. This is a default constructor. You can see this constructor does not receive any parameter. So I'll use an alert function to display this date directly on the screen. I'm using date one here. So what is the output it is displaying? Friday, August 28, 2020. So the time is 12:45 minutes, 12 hours 45 minutes and 25 seconds. And the time is displayed in Indian Standard Time format, IST, which is 5.5 hours ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. Right? So GMT plus 5.5 hours, 05:30. It means that we are ahead of Greenwich Mean Time by 5.5 hours. And as per that Indian Standard Time, today's weekday is Friday, month is August, and the date is 28th, year is 2020, time is 12 hours 45 minutes 25 seconds. Look at how the hours, minutes, and seconds are separated. Each of them is separated with a colon symbol, right? So what do you understand from this? When you create an object, with this constructor, the first type of constructor without any parameters like this. So this constructor is going to create this date object containing current time date at whichever time you're running this JavaScript. So whatever time is there, that same time will appear as a value of this date object. Look at my time here; it is 12:46 now, right? So if I refresh this browser, whatever time is there now, that will be displayed. Now it is updated. Earlier it was before when we ran, it was 12:45 25 seconds. Now it is 12:46 56 seconds. So one more time, if I refresh now, it is 12:47 9 seconds, right? So at the time of running this script, whatever time is there and whatever date is there, so that date and time will be displayed as per Indian Standard Time with this construct. Now I'll create one more date object using another constructor. Say date 1, date 2 equal to new operator, and here I'm going to use another constructor. This constructor receives one, say, one integer parameter. So this integer parameter will be considered as milliseconds. 20 means 20 milliseconds. So let me show you the output of this program. Let me use this alert for this one. What is the date? Thursday, January 1st, 1970, 5:30 a.m. This is the time displayed here. So why this date is displayed means because by default JavaScript will take the time from midnight, that is 12 p.m. 12 a.m. in the night, right? From midnight of December 31st, 1969. So from here it is going to count. So if it is midnight means it is 12 a.m. right? It is 12 a.m. 12 a.m. is nothing but January 1st, right? It becomes January 1st. So from there, from midnight, that is at 12 in midnight of December 31st, from there, it will count how many milliseconds? It will count 20 milliseconds. After 20 milliseconds, what will be the time? That time will be displayed here as output. That will be stored in as a value of this data. So even though I use 20 milliseconds, it is still showing 5:30 a.m. Why it is showing 5:30 a.m.? Because by default the Greenwich Mean Time will be considered, but because we are using Indian Standard Time, so 5.5 hours will be ahead of midnight 12. So it will be 5:30 a.m. in the morning. So 5:30 a.m. in the morning. From there, how many milliseconds have passed? 20 milliseconds have passed. So if you say 20 milliseconds, then it will be considered as 5:30 a.m. only. Why? Because how many milliseconds make a second? 1000 milliseconds make a second. So if I give even 200 also, it will remain as 5:30 a.m. only. But still, it will not be considered as 2 seconds or 1 second. Now I'll get first data object like this, and second object will show the time as 5:30 a.m. only. But if I give 2000 milliseconds, so 1000 milliseconds make a second. 2000 milliseconds means 2 seconds. So now the time will be shown as 5:30 and 2 seconds. You are able to see 2 seconds because 2000 milliseconds make a second. Then I'll make this as 20,000. 20,000 means 20 seconds. So look at the number of seconds, 20 seconds. Right? And if I make this as 2 lakhs milliseconds, let us see what will be the time. It will be 33, 533 means 3 minutes 20 seconds. 3 minutes 20 seconds make 2 lakhs milliseconds. Okay, so you need to keep this in mind. So from where this date is going to be created, starting from midnight 1969, December 31st, how many milliseconds have passed, that many milliseconds, that will be the time that will be stored in this date object. Create this way. So this will receive one integer parameter. This constructor will receive one integer parameter. Now let us create one more date object, date3. So using another constructor. Now I'm going to use a constructor date. This will receive say 7 parameters altogether. I'll use 20, 9 or 16. The parameters are there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So one more say 100. So this constructor will receive 7 parameters together. The first parameter, all are integers only. The first parameter is the year. Second parameter is the month. So I'm saying 2020 year. 9 means which month it will be. Don't think that it is going to be September, because the numbering will start from 0. 0 is January. So 9 will be October. If we want to have September, I have to use it as 8. Okay? So September is 8. And what is this 16? 16 is day in the month. 16th September 2020. And this 3 is 3 hours time, right? And 30 is minutes. And this 20 is seconds. And 100 is milliseconds. So totally, you'll have 7 parameters for this constructor. So now, if you say this object, let us skip this first two objects. Third object, see what is the date? Wednesday, September 16, 2020. 3 hours, 30 minutes, and 20 seconds. It is not going to display milliseconds 100 there, because as per the syntax, when you display date object, it will display only up to seconds. It is not going to display the milliseconds. Right now, if I change this 100 to 1000, so because 1000 milliseconds make a second, even though you have given the seconds as 20, so this will display seconds as 21. I show that to you. How many seconds it is showing? 21, even though I have given 20 as second value, but it is showing 21 because the seventh parameter, that is milliseconds, I have given as 1000, so it will display as 21. Okay, so this is third constructor. So now let me show you the fourth one also. Date 4 I'm giving. This constructor receives a string parameter, so you can specify string parameter like this. Say 2016, you can say like this. You mention the month name like this, SCP, date as 2 like this, and mention like this. Then give a space, and after the space, you can mention the time like this. Say hours is 15 colon hours, minutes is 30 colon seconds. You can specify like this. Refresh this. Let us skip first 3. So what is it displaying? It is Friday, September 2nd, 2016 is Friday. and the time is displayed as 15 hours 30 minutes and 12 seconds, right? So this is another way. So this constructor receives a string parameter. So how to mention the date? The string parameter is year number. Year you have to mention directly the complete year 2016 like this. After that give a comma, and for date and the month you don't need to give a comma here. In short, you can mention the month name as the first three letters. If it is Jan, Jan. If it is August, AUG. September, SCP. Like that, first three letters you can mention. You need not mention the complete month name. After mentioning the month name, give a space. Don't give a comma. And mention the day either in single digit or multiple two digits. You can specify. Even if you give two, also nothing will happen. Right? So it will display. Right? So you can mention the day. After month name, give space and mention the day of the month. And after that, give a space. After space, you can mention the hours, minutes, and seconds by each one of them separated with a colon symbol. After hours, use colon symbol, then minutes, then again colon symbol, and then seconds. No need to mention milliseconds. Even if you specify millisecond, also it will not be considered. Right. So this entire thing you have to put it in double quotes. Give it as a string parameter. So if you observe the four constructors, the first constructor does not receive any parameter. Second constructor receives one integer parameter, and that integer value is nothing but it is representing the number of milliseconds that have passed since midnight 31st December 1969. And the third constructor receives seven integer parameters uh, in order like first integer is year, second one is month, third one is day, fourth one is hours, fifth one is minutes, sixth one is second, and seventh one is milliseconds. And coming to the fourth constructor, it receives a string parameter in this format, right? So this is how you can create date objects in your JavaScript program. If you want to know the current day, then you can obtain it by creating a date object like this. Right? So what is the current time and date? To get that current day and date, you have to use this constructor. If you want to know how much, what will be the date and time after so and so milliseconds from December 31st, 1969 midnight, then you can use this constructor. And if you want to specify a date, a specific date of year, month, day, time, or seconds and milliseconds, then you can use this one. And if you want to specify this in the same way like this, but in a string format, if you want to mention, you can mention like this using the fourth constructor. Right? So this is how you can create date objects. So with this, we completed two objects today: array object and date object. So in the next class, we are going to see regular expressions by using that regular expression object. But before coming to that class, I want all of you to find out the list of all the functions that are associated with number object, math object, and boolean object and string object, and write some programs on them. Because they are very simple, I am leaving it to you. Fine. In the next class, we are going to deal with a regular expression. So that regular expression purpose is for data validation, form validation. So we'll see that form validation, what is form validation concept, and how to use regular expression predefined object in JavaScript to perform form validation. Okay. So if you have texted your roll numbers, you can leave it. Otherwise, please text your roll numbers now. Then you can leave the class.